Everybody, thanks for watching. Today I want to talk about slide guitar and open D tuning. I feel like I say this with about every video, but this is a vast ocean of a subject, and so I just want to give you kind of a reasonably quick breakdown of it that I could fit into a reasonably lengthy video. I'll do more videos in the future, and certainly if you have any specific questions about it, let me know and I can make a video on that specific issue. So, okay, so let's start with kind of a basic breakdown here. Okay, so this is open D tuning. Obviously, I'm tuning to a D chord, right? So this is D, A, D, F sharp, A, D. Okay, so strumming all the chords would give you, all the strings would give you a D chord. Same at the 12th fret. Okay, so one of the things I like about this tuning is a lot of the intervals are similar to standard tuning. The G string gets a little funky, but you just kind of learn to work around that or avoid it completely in your playing. But so we've got if we're playing in the key of D, you got your 1 chord here, your 4 chord at the 5th fret, your 5 chord at the 7th fret. I'm just borrowing all the strings. And so on, okay? So your major 2nd, major 3rd, 4, 5, 6, back to your 1. So that's pretty nice because, you know, if you're playing in the key of D, you can kind of almost think of those intervals like you would in standard tuning. I mean, if you were playing in the key of E, this would be your 4, this would be your 5, and so on. So you can get, you've also got this nice power chord on the top or on the low 2 strings. So you can play those shuffle grooves like. So you can get that nice low bass sound from that low D, which when you're playing solo guitar to me is critical, which is another reason I like this tuning, especially for that, because I can use that low string to fill out the bass end of what's going on. Okay, so should also mention that another reason I like this tuning is on the high 2 strings, which are now a D and an A. Your intervals are the same as they are in standard tuning. So all the licks you know on those top 2 strings in standard tuning will now work in this tuning. Of course, you'll be down a whole step, so you'll be in, you know, a key that's a whole step lower. But for example, on that high string, you can play the major scale just like you would. Same on the low string too. And you've got another D here on the D string. Okay, so to me those intervals make sense because I kind of already know them from standard tuning, so you can kind of use that to your advantage. As far as the slide playing goes, it's also nice because these top 3 strings make a major triad. So you can get those kind of nice kind of faux lap steel sounds. Another advantage to playing in an open tuning, especially with slide, is, you know, it's important to mute the strings properly, which we'll get into. I could probably do a whole video series about that. But the good thing about an open tuning versus standard tuning is if you don't quite mute properly, it still sounds okay because you've got, you know, harmonically that all rings out as an open chord, whereas if you were playing in standard tuning and your muting is not, you know, on point like it should be, it's not gonna sound very good. So another good thing about this tuning is you can kind of you can whomp on it pretty good. And it sounds cool. I mean, that's the first, you know, slide lick I ever learned was that kind of Elmore James, Robert Johnson thing. Probably goes back even further than them, but they were kind of the ones that brought it to people's ears the most. But and all that is just putting your slide on the 12th fret, upstrokes on the top 4 strings with a nice even vibrato. And then if you play with your fingers, you can throw that bass note in there. And make a career playing that for all of eternity. So anyway, and to me, for the record, that does sound like upstrokes. So instead of downstrokes would be, to me that doesn't quite sound right. It sounds like upstrokes when I listen to those guys play it. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, you can do a lot, if we're just going to stay in the key of D here, you can do a lot of stuff right around this 12th fret. I mean, that's where all those Elmore James licks, a lot of the, Dwayne Allman licks, and all the slide licks you've heard, a lot of them are just based around that one chord position on the 12th fret. So, especially with the addition of this this note, which is oh boy, let me see, F. So this is going to be an E flat. Please don't get mad at me if I got that wrong, but it's the 11th fret of the G string. So just down a half step from that barred position there. So you can do a lot of work in that area. And then, like I said, throwing in licks that you already know, like that little major scale thing like that. And then on the what's the A string now, it used to be the B string, at the 5th fret, that's another root note, that's another D. Just like it would be in standard tuning, it'd be your root note, the key of E. So you can do a lot of stuff sliding up to that. Sliding up to the 4 chord. 5 chord. 4 chord. Back to the 1, and that low D to me just sounds great. It's cool. You can tune that down a whole nother step, and you've got down a step from this, and you've got open C, which is also gives a super cool sound. That low C sounds incredible to me. And then if you want to play in the key of E, and you still want to use all those open string licks, all you do is put a capo on the 2nd fret. And so that's another way this is kind of a really versatile tuning to use, and one of the reasons I kind of favor it for this type of thing. But especially because you can let a lot of those strings ring, and as long as you're playing in the key of the open strings, and D in this case, it's going to sound good. Other kind of common licks or whatever you hear in this tuning come from a lot of some of the notes around this 3rd fret on the low string. So just going back and forth between the notes on the 3rd fret. Open string. You do the Breaking Bad intro up there somewhere, right? Something like that. I don't know how to play it. But anyway, kind of putting that all together, you can really go a long way with this tuning. So let's talk about some slide basics if you're not quite there yet. There's a couple things to really keep in mind with playing slide. The most important thing to me is intonation. So if I were to play this D on the 12th fret, just by fretting the note, I just push down between those frets, and there it is. If I put the slide in the same place, that's not right. That sounds terrible. So your intonation's not correct if you're playing between the frets. What you need to do is put the slide directly over the fret. And that's how the players that are really good at this and just nail it, their intonation is impeccable. I mean, that's what makes them great slide players. One of the things. So think about that and make sure when you're practicing and playing that you are getting your intonation right. So in this case, I'd be right over the 12th fret. I need to put the slide right over the 12th fret. So here's the fretted note, and here's the note with the slide. Right over that fret. Okay, so intonation, and the second important thing to me is vibrato. And man, I just hear a lot of, you're going to hear me talk about this a lot because it's a pet peeve of mine. Vibrato is so important, not only with slide playing, but with playing fretted notes also, and I feel like a lot of people just don't spend near enough time with it. So to me, the key for a good slide vibrato is consistency in the direction and how do I say this? Consistency in the distance you move on either side of the note. Okay, so for example, I'm moving back and forth on either side of that note, the same distance on either side for that consistent sound. Now you can do it. You can have a real wide vibrato, or you can have a tight vibrato, or somewhere in between, and it's nice to have access to all those and just kind of do them as you feel like it. That a lot of your personality is going to kind of come out in that vibrato. That kind of makes you sound like who you are, to my mind. But the key is to have that consistent direction on either, or distance on either side of that note. Do it slow, you can do it fast, but that nice even distance on either side of the note is going to make it sound good, to me at least. Okay, so you've got intonation, vibrato, and then sort of learning where those notes are in the new tuning, in the open tuning. But like I said, a lot of those intervals, especially on the top 2 strings, are the same. You've got power chords on the low strings, and then you've got this weird G string to kind of work around, which, boy, I don't really have any good advice about that, other than just spending some time with it and figuring out what you can do. So it works well as a nice passing chord or passing sound up to that root. Right, there's my root, another root up there. So you really just have to spend a lot of time with the tuning, learning where things are. I like to use licks like that on the low strings, the kind of little bass runs. Because your major scale is right there on the low strings. And then when you switch chords, you're right there with the same patterns again. So it makes it pretty easy to play over the chord changes. You can also do that right in this box over the root. So there's my one on the low D. So you're over the 4 chord, you'd play over the 10th fret of the B string, and then your 5 is going to be the 12th fret of the B string. So let me give you kind of an example if I can. So. So hopefully you heard me kind of playing over the chord changes, but they're all right there in that little area, so you can get a lot of work done without too much moving around. Then over the 4 chord, up here. Back to the 1. There's your 5, this open A string. Down to the 4, playing a little, kind of sliding that major triad down from the 5 to the 4. A little kind of lap steel. So, like I said, you can do a lot with it. For solo guitar, it's kind of my favorite tuning to play in, just because, like I said, I've got that low D, so you can play that good shuffle groove. If you want to do some alternate picking with kind of a straight groove or hill country style stuff, or the real syncopated stuff, you've got your 2 Ds right here, and that works really well. I think I'll do another video on all these just solo guitar concepts in this tune, but. See, there I'm just using a lick I would use in standard tuning on the 2 high strings to just keep that bass going. That's another thing I really love about this tuning, is you can play those alternating bass, which is basically just octave of a 1, or throw the 5 in there if you want. Playing your bass parts on the low strings, and you've got 3, but especially 2, those 2 high strings, to just play all the melody lines you want, whatever you want, and your bass lines never get in the way. kind of off the top of my head, but you can really do a lot with the tuning if you figure out, kind of relearn where the notes are. But like I said, on those high 2 strings, you already know where the notes are, so that's real handy. So anyway, hopefully that gives you a place to start. Like I said, this is a big ocean to talk about, but if you have any specific questions about this, please send me a message and I'll make another video about it. But hopefully that gives you a good place to start, and mess around with it, spend some time with the tuning, and see what you can come up with for yourself. That should cover some of the basics of this. Okay, thanks again for watching. We'll see you soon.